She worked at a small cafe in a quiet part of the town. Every morning, she would wake up before the sun, feeling the familiar ache in her back and legs from long hours she had worked before. She was just a waitress, nothing special in anyone's eyes, and most people ignored her as she moved around the tables with practiced ease. Her life had become a rhythm, almost like a song that never changed, one she had learned to live with. The cafe was not fancy. Wooden chairs creaked when people sat, and the tables were worn with years of use. The air always smelled like coffee and pastries, and sometimes a faint hint of cleaning supplies. She knew every regular customer's order by heart. There was the old man who came every morning for a black coffee and a small piece of pie, the young couple who liked to share a chocolate muffin, and the woman who always wanted extra cream in her latte. She greeted them all with a smile, though some barely looked at her. People treated her like she was invisible, but she had learned not to mind. She had her own world inside her head, and that was enough. Her coworkers often made jokes, sometimes about her clumsiness, sometimes about how quiet she was. She didn't get upset. She just laughed softly and went about her work. There was a freedom in not being noticed, in being able to do what she wanted without anyone paying too much attention. But deep down, she wished for something more, something that would make her life feel alive, that would let her feel seen. Music had always been her secret world. When she was younger, she had a small keyboard at home, a hand-me-down that had keys sticking sometimes and a faint smell of dust. She spent hours there when no one was watching, learning the notes from memory, improvising melodies that made her feel like she was somewhere else, somewhere magical. No one knew she could play like that. Her family didn't have much money and couldn't afford proper lessons, and she never told her friends. It was her secret, a quiet joy she held close to her heart. Even at work, she would hum little tunes under her breath while carrying plates, tapping rhythms on the tables when she thought no one was looking. It wasn't much, just small bits of music, but it kept her spirits alive through the long, tiring days. Sometimes, she imagined a big hall filled with people listening to her play, their eyes wide with wonder, their hearts touched by her music. It was a dream, something she thought she could never reach, but it made the hard work bearable. One rainy afternoon, the cafe was busier than usual. People were coming in to escape the cold and wet streets, their coats dripping water onto the floor. She moved quickly, wiping tables, taking orders, bringing coffee and sandwiches with a steady smile. Her feet were sore, and her hands were a little tired from the constant work, but she didn't complain. There was a rhythm to her movements, a flow she had perfected over the years. She could carry multiple plates at once without spilling a drop, and she always knew where each customer needed to be served. Between the orders, she stole quick glances at the piano in the corner. It was an old instrument, not used much, but it had a presence that drew her in. Her fingers itched to touch the keys, to feel the smoothness under her fingertips, and hear the melodies that lived in her mind. She didn't dare, of course. She was just a waitress, and who would care if she played anyway? It was a silly thought, and she pushed it aside, focusing on her work, but the desire stayed. The owner of the cafe was a kind man, though busy and often distracted. He appreciated her hard work but didn't really notice the small things she did that went beyond the job. She cleaned the tables without complaint, remembered orders without writing them down, and made the customers feel comfortable. She was good at her work, but good was invisible in a place like this. No one said much about it. Still, she kept going, keeping her head down and smiling, because there was pride in doing something well even if no one noticed. During the afternoon lull, she finally had a small break. She sat down at a quiet table, sipped her lukewarm coffee, and let herself breathe. The cafe was calm now, with only a few customers chatting softly or reading newspapers. She closed her eyes and let the music in her head play. The melodies were gentle, soothing, comforting. She imagined her fingers dancing across the piano keys, the notes floating out into the room, filling it with warmth. She imagined faces turning toward her, surprised, delighted, moved. It was a beautiful thought, but just a thought. A few of the customers glanced at her sometimes, noticing the way she carried herself, the quiet grace in her movements, but they didn't know what they were looking at. They only saw a waitress, busy and polite, nothing more. She knew how easy it was for people to make assumptions, to see someone only in the role they were given, and she had learned not to be hurt by it. Her music was her own world, and it mattered more than their opinions. Evening came, and the cafe started to fill again. Dinner rush was approaching, and she moved faster, carrying plates and drinks, answering questions, and keeping the tables tidy. Her arms ached, and her feet were tired, but she kept going. She was used to it, and there was a quiet satisfaction in a job done well. Every smile she received, every polite thank you, reminded her that her work had meaning, even if the world outside didn't notice. At the end of the day, when the last customer left and the lights dimmed, she stayed behind to clean up. The piano sat in the corner, its keys gleaming faintly under the soft lights. She stood in front of it, staring, feeling the pull of the music once again. Her heart beat faster, her fingers tingled. One day maybe she would sit there and play. One day, someone might hear the music she had kept hidden for so long. Until then, she would wait, keeping the secret close, and letting her heart sing quietly in the spaces between her busy, ordinary life. It was a chilly Friday evening, and the cafe was brighter than usual. The owner had arranged a small gathering for some local guests, a few music enthusiasts, and regulars who liked to spend their evenings there. The air smelled of fresh pastries and coffee, but there was also an unusual excitement, a buzz that made everything feel different. She moved around as usual, carrying drinks and answering questions, feeling the energy of the room shift with the chatter and laughter. She noticed that the piano in the corner had been polished and prepared. It stood there silently, as if waiting for someone to bring it to life. Normally, it was just part of the furniture, a decoration that no one touched. But tonight, the room seemed to expect it to sing. She glanced at it while serving a table and felt the familiar pull in her chest. Her fingers itched to play, but she kept her hands on the trays and tried not to think about it too much. Everything was going smoothly until a sudden announcement changed the evening. The guest pianist, who was supposed to perform, had been delayed due to traffic. People whispered, wondering who could possibly take his place. Some joked, saying it would be funny if a waitress tried, just a little tune to fill the gap. The guests laughed, not seriously, just a playful comment in the middle of the cozy evening. She froze for a moment, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. She was just a waitress, and everyone was watching her now in a different way with expectation, even if it was meant to be playful. A small voice inside her wondered if this was the moment she had imagined so many times, though she had never allowed herself to hope. She tried to shake it off, returning to her work with a slightly faster heartbeat. A friendly guest noticed her hesitation and smiled warmly. "Why not?" the guest said. "Sit and play a bit. Just a melody. It will be fun." She felt her cheeks heat up. Her heart raced, and her stomach twisted with nerves. She wanted to say no, to return to the safety of carrying trays and taking orders, but something in her wanted to try just a little. Music had always been her refuge, and the piano seemed to whisper to her now, inviting her to reveal the secret she had kept for so long. Slowly, she approached the piano, feeling the eyes of the room on her. Every step was heavy, her mind racing with doubt and excitement. She hesitated, glancing at the polished keys. They looked different under the soft lights, almost alive. She had played many times before, but never in front of anyone who wasn't family or friends, never in a place where people might judge her. She took a deep breath and sat down on the bench, her hands hovering above the keys, unsure if she should touch them. The room quieted as people realized she was going to play. The whispers faded, and there was only the faint sound of rain tapping against the windows outside. Her hands trembled slightly, but she closed her eyes and remembered the music she had played countless times at home. The melodies were familiar, flowing in her mind like a river she had longed to follow. Slowly, she pressed the first key, a soft note that filled the corner of the room. It was gentle, unassuming, but it was a start. She continued, finding her rhythm. Each note seemed to give her more confidence. The nervousness melted away, replaced by a calm focus. Her fingers moved over the keys as if they had a memory of their own, recalling the hours she had spent practicing alone, hidden from the world. The music began to fill the room, and something incredible happened. The guests stopped talking. They stopped moving, listening carefully to the notes that floated through the air. The soft melody turned into a richer, more complex piece, and she felt herself become part of it, not just playing, but living it. As she played, memories of her secret practice sessions at home came flooding back. She remembered the quiet afternoons when she would play until her fingers ached, the way she would experiment with new melodies and harmonies, and the joy of discovering something beautiful in the music. She realized that all those moments had prepared her for this exact time, this exact moment where she could let her music speak without words. She was no longer just a waitress. She was the music itself. The guests were captivated. Their polite curiosity had turned into genuine amazement. Some leaned forward in their chairs, eyes wide, as they tried to comprehend the skill and emotion coming from someone they had thought of as ordinary. Others exchanged whispers, astonished at the talent that had remained hidden in plain sight for so long. The room seemed to shrink. The only thing that mattered was the music and the young woman who had dared to play. She lost herself in the melodies, forgetting where she was, forgetting the cafe, the guests, and even her job. The piano became an extension of her body, and the music poured out naturally, effortlessly. It was as if all the years of secret practice, all the longing and hope, had been waiting for this one night. Each note was a story, each chord a reflection of her soul. She had never felt so alive, so connected to something bigger than herself. The piece she played was a mix of familiar tunes she had learned and her own improvisation, a reflection of her personality and heart. She could feel the audience leaning in, their eyes fixed, their hearts moving with the rhythm and melody. Some had tears in their eyes, some had their mouths slightly open in disbelief. She had never imagined that anyone outside her own imagination could experience her music this way. When the last note lingered in the air and faded softly, there was a brief silence, a moment where time itself seemed to pause. Then, the room erupted in applause. People stood, clapped, and cheered, their excitement and admiration filling the space. She sat there, stunned, her hands still on the keys, unsure if this was real. The warmth of the applause and the smiles of astonished faces felt overwhelming, but also deeply rewarding. For the first time, she realized that her secret talent was not just hers alone. It could touch others, move them, and be seen and appreciated. The owner of the cafe came over, his eyes wide, almost speechless. He had known she was talented, but seeing her play like that in front of a room full of people changed everything. Guests approached her, asking questions about her background, how she learned, and if she had ever performed before. She shook her head shyly, explaining that she had always played in private, never expecting anyone to hear. Their amazement only grew, and some even suggested she consider performing more publicly. That night, as the cafe quieted and the last guests left, she sat at the piano once more, just for herself. The room was empty now, but the magic lingered. She played softly, not for anyone else, but for the joy of it, the fulfillment of her passion. She realized that life had given her a chance to step out of the shadows, even if just a little, and that her music had the power to reach people in ways she had only dreamed of. She left the cafe that night with a heart full of hope and excitement. She walked home in the cool night air, her mind buzzing with possibilities. For the first time in a long time, she felt that her life could change, that her dreams could be more than just secret wishes. The piano had opened a door, and she had taken the first step through it. The world outside might still see her as just a waitress, but she knew that she had something extraordinary inside her, something that could not be hidden any longer. The next morning, she woke up with a strange mix of excitement and nerves. The memory of the previous night's performance lingered in her mind, making her heart race and her hands tingle as if she had just played. She couldn't stop thinking about the expressions on the faces of the guests, the surprise, the admiration, and the way the music had seemed to carry everyone away. For the first time in her life, she felt that her secret world of music was real, and it had touched people beyond her own imagination. At work, she moved through her routine with a new lightness in her steps. Customers noticed a difference too. Her smile seemed brighter, her eyes more lively, and even the coworkers who had teased her before looked at her with a hint of curiosity. She still carried trays, cleaned tables, and served drinks, but there was a quiet pride in her work now. She knew that she had a talent that was hers and hers alone, and that knowledge made the daily grind feel different, more bearable, even enjoyable. During a small lull in the cafe, she found herself drawn to the piano again. She walked over slowly, almost reverently, and placed her hands on the keys. This time, there were no eyes watching, no audience waiting. She played softly, experimenting with melodies, letting her fingers wander across the keys. It was a private joy, a continuation of the magic she had discovered the night before. Each note was a whisper of her own story, a way to express what words could never capture. The memory of the applause came back to her, warm and glowing, and she allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. She remembered how she had felt nervous at first, unsure if she could even make the piano sound right in front of people, and yet how quickly that fear had melted away as the music took over. It was as if the piano had been waiting for her all this time, and now it had finally recognized her. Later that day, a regular guest approached her. He had been at the gathering the night before and wanted to talk. "I didn't know you could play like that," he said, his eyes wide with genuine amazement. "You have real talent. You should think about performing more often." She shook her head shyly, unsure of how to respond. She had never imagined that anyone outside her secret practice sessions would take her seriously. The idea that her music could be appreciated by others was both thrilling and terrifying. The rest of the day passed in a blur. She served customers with the same efficiency as always, but her mind was elsewhere. Every time she passed the piano, she felt a magnetic pull, an irresistible urge to sit and play. She imagined a future where she could share her music more openly, where people could hear the melodies that had lived inside her for so long. The thought made her heart beat faster and brought a smile to her face that she could not hide. That evening, another small event was scheduled at the cafe. A few guests had requested some music, remembering her performance from the night before. The owner, still in awe, approached her cautiously. Would you mind playing again tonight?" he asked softly. She hesitated, feeling the familiar flutter of nerves. But then she thought of the joy she had felt, the connection she had made with people through her music, and she nodded. She walked to the piano as the room quieted in anticipation. Her hands hovered over the keys, trembling slightly, but this time she felt a spark of confidence. She took a deep breath and pressed down on the first key. The sound resonated through the room, and she closed her eyes, letting the music guide her. This time, she was not playing just to fill a gap or to amuse people. She was playing to share a piece of herself, to give voice to the melodies that had lived in her heart for so long. The audience was immediately captivated. The notes flowed from the piano effortlessly, a blend of delicate emotion and technical skill. She played with a freedom she had never known before, improvising slightly, experimenting with rhythm and melody, letting her personality shine through each movement. She felt alive, connected, and completely in control, as if the music was an extension of her very being. People watched in amazement, leaning forward, unable to look away. Some had tears in their eyes, some whispered to each other in disbelief. They had come expecting a simple tune, perhaps a polite performance, and instead were witnessing something extraordinary. She noticed the astonishment on the owner's face, his admiration clear, and it fueled her even more. Each note was a conversation, each chord a story, and she realized that she could communicate with people through music in a way words never allowed. Time seemed to stop as she played. The room disappeared, leaving only the piano, the music, and the emotion that poured from her fingertips. Her mind drifted to memories of past practice sessions, of quiet afternoons when she had been alone with her music, feeling the joy and frustration of learning and creating. She realized that all those moments had prepared her for this, that all the hours of secret dedication were now paying off in the most magical way possible. When the piece ended, there was a moment of silence, a collective breath held, as if the audience could not believe what they had just witnessed. Then the room erupted into applause, louder and more enthusiastic than the night before. People stood, clapped, and cheered, their admiration genuine and heartfelt. She sat there, her hands still on the keys, feeling a mix of disbelief and exhilaration. This was more than she had ever dreamed, more than she had ever imagined possible. Afterwards, guests approached her, asking questions, complimenting her skill, and encouraging her to perform more often. She explained softly that she had always played in private, never expecting anyone to hear. Their astonishment only grew, and some even offered to help her find opportunities to share her music more widely. The thought was exciting but also overwhelming. She had always been content in her quiet world of practice and imagination, and now that world was expanding in ways she had never anticipated. She returned to the piano later that night, when the cafe was empty, and played again for herself. The notes were soft, reflective, a contrast to the powerful melodies she had shared with the audience. She allowed herself to explore, to experiment, to express the quiet corners of her heart. The piano responded as it always had, faithfully, joyfully, and she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. It was not just about performing for others anymore. It was about connecting with herself, with the music, and with the part of her soul that had always been waiting for this moment. As she left the cafe that night, walking home under the quiet glow of streetlights, she felt different. She felt seen, even if only through the music, and she felt the beginnings of a new chapter in her life. The piano had opened a door, and she had stepped through it, discovering a world of possibilities, of expression, and of connection. For the first time, she understood that her talent was not something to hide, but something to share, something that could bring joy and wonder to others. And for the first time, she felt ready to embrace it fully, without fear, without hesitation, and without doubt. That evening, the cafe held another small gathering, and she could feel the tension in the air. Guests were chatting excitedly, some still talking about her previous performances, unable to forget the magic they had witnessed. She moved through the tables as usual, serving drinks and pastries, but her mind kept returning to the piano in the corner. It was calling to her again, urging her to let the music flow freely, to show a side of herself she had always kept hidden. The anticipation made her heart pound and her palms sweat, a familiar combination of fear and exhilaration. The owner approached, looking nervous but hopeful. "Would you consider playing again tonight?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, remembering the previous night and how her nerves had nearly stopped her. But the memory of the smiles, the applause, and the awe in the eyes of the guests gave her courage. She nodded, taking a deep breath, and walked to the piano. The room quieted immediately, sensing that something special was about to happen. As she sat at the piano bench, her fingers hovered above the keys, trembling slightly. She closed her eyes and let herself remember the countless hours she had spent alone, practicing and perfecting melodies. Each note carried a memory, each chord an emotion. Slowly, she pressed the first key, a soft, clear note that seemed to echo in the quiet room. She continued, her hands moving more confidently now, weaving a melody that was both delicate and powerful. It was as if the piano had become part of her body, an extension of her soul. The audience watched in awe, their eyes wide, their breaths held. The music was not just beautiful. It was moving, filled with emotion that seemed to reach into the hearts of everyone listening. She played with a freedom and depth that surprised even herself. The nerves that had once gripped her completely disappeared, replaced by a pure connection to the music and the room. She could feel the energy of the listeners, the way the notes traveled to them, and it made her play with even more intensity and passion. Each chord was deliberate, each melody carefully yet naturally unfolding. She allowed herself to improvise, to explore different rhythms, and to express her emotions fully. The audience was mesmerized, leaning forward, their faces a mix of amazement and delight. Some had tears in their eyes, others whispered quietly to each other, unable to comprehend that such talent had come from someone they had considered ordinary. The transformation from a simple waitress to an extraordinary musician was happening right before their eyes. She remembered the first time she had touched a piano at home, the feel of the keys, the sound of each note, and the way it made her heart soar. Those memories fueled her now, and she played with an intensity that was almost otherworldly. Her music told a story of longing, hope, and hidden dreams. Every person in the room felt it, even if they couldn't put it into words. They were witnessing not just talent, but the beauty of someone sharing a part of themselves they had kept hidden for so long. The cafe seemed to fade away. The chatter, the clinking of cups, even the soft rain outside, disappeared. There was only her and the piano, and the music that flowed effortlessly from her fingers. Time felt suspended, and the audience was transported along with her, lost in the melody, captivated by every note. She played faster now, building intensity, letting the emotion guide her hands, and the room responded. Every sound resonated, creating a wave of energy that seemed to fill every corner of the space. She noticed the guests leaning in, their eyes shining with amazement. They had come to a small cafe expecting an ordinary evening, and instead were witnessing something extraordinary. The young woman in front of them, once unnoticed, had become the center of attention without saying a word. The music spoke for her, telling a story that went beyond appearances, beyond titles or jobs. It was a reminder that talent and passion can reside anywhere, even in someone who seems ordinary at first glance. Her hands danced across the keys, moving faster, yet with precision, creating a harmony that was breathtaking. She experimented with dynamics, playing softly in one moment, then strong and commanding in the next. The contrast made the music alive, almost breathing, as if it had a life of its own. Each note carried her heart, her experiences, her dreams, and the audience could feel it. They were not just listening. They were experiencing her emotions, feeling her journey in every chord and melody. When she played the last note, there was a moment of complete silence. No one moved or spoke, as if the world itself had paused to absorb the beauty of what they had just heard. Then, as if released from a spell, the room erupted in applause, cheers, and whistles. People stood, clapping loudly, some on their feet, others wiping tears from their eyes. Her heart swelled with emotion, a mixture of relief, joy, and pride. The music had worked its magic. She had connected with them in a way words never could. The owner came over, his face a mixture of astonishment and admiration. He had always known she was talented, but seeing her perform like this, commanding the room with her music, was beyond anything he had imagined. Guests approached, complimenting her skill, asking how she had learned, and encouraging her to continue. Some suggested opportunities for her to perform publicly, at concerts, or even on local television. She listened politely, feeling both overwhelmed and excited. The possibilities were suddenly endless. After the crowd had left, she stayed behind, sitting at the piano alone. The room was quiet now, except for the faint hum of the city outside. She played softly, exploring the keys, letting herself relax into the music. It was no longer about impressing anyone. It was about her, about the joy of playing, and the fulfillment she had found in sharing her passion. She realized that this was only the beginning, that her journey as a musician was just starting, and the excitement of the unknown filled her with hope and energy. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from the quiet afternoons of secret practice, to the moments of self-doubt, to the courage it took to sit in front of an audience. Every step had led to this. The piano had been her companion, her confidant, and her outlet, and now it had also become her voice in the world. She understood that the music was not just about talent. It was about connection, emotion, and bravery, about daring to reveal a hidden part of herself and trusting that it could touch others. As she left the cafe that night, the piano still echoing in her heart, she felt a sense of transformation. She was no longer just the waitress who served coffee and cleaned tables. She was a musician, a storyteller through her music, someone who had discovered the power of sharing her talent. The journey ahead was uncertain, full of possibilities and challenges. But she knew that as long as she had her music, she had a path forward. And for the first time in her life, she felt truly alive, confident, and ready to embrace whatever came next. The next morning, she woke up with a mixture of excitement and nervousness that made it hard to get out of bed. The memory of last night's performance was vivid in her mind. The applause, the cheers, the stunned expressions of the guests. It all felt almost surreal. She had always dreamed of sharing her music, but she had never imagined it could be this powerful, this moving. Now, the thought that people might want to hear her play again filled her with both joy and a quiet apprehension. As she arrived at the cafe, she noticed that the energy was different. People were talking about her performance from the night before, sharing stories and expressing their amazement. Some regulars came up to her with wide smiles, saying things like, "You were incredible," or, "We had no idea you could play like that." She smiled politely, a little shy, but inside her heart was full of pride. She had always loved music, and now the world had a glimpse of what she could do. Her coworkers also noticed a change. They were less teasing now, some even approaching her with genuine curiosity about her talent. The young woman realized that the perception of others could change so quickly when they saw a side of her they had never imagined. She felt a new confidence growing inside her, but it was tempered with humility. She knew that her journey was just beginning and that she had much to learn and explore. During the afternoon, a few guests returned, asking if she could play again. The owner approached her quietly, saying, "People loved what you did. Would you mind playing a little for them?" She hesitated, her nerves flaring, but the memory of the joy she felt while playing reassured her. She nodded and followed him to the piano, feeling the familiar pull of the keys beneath her fingers. The room quieted as she sat down, anticipation hanging in the air. She started softly, letting her fingers find the keys, each note clear and precise. As she played, she allowed herself to improvise, exploring the melodies that lived in her heart. The music seemed to flow naturally, effortlessly, filling the room with warmth and emotion. People leaned in, captivated by the beauty and depth of her playing. It was more than just skill. It was expression, storytelling without words, a reflection of her soul. After she finished, there was a moment of silence before the applause began. This time, the reaction was even more enthusiastic than before. Guests approached her, complimenting her talent, asking questions about her background, and suggesting opportunities to perform publicly. Some even offered to introduce her to local music teachers or concert organizers. She listened politely, her mind racing with possibilities and questions. The idea of stepping beyond the cafe into a larger world was exciting, but also daunting. Over the next few days, the attention she received grew. People shared videos of her playing on social media, praising her skill and expressing amazement that such talent had been hidden for so long. She became a local sensation, not because of fame, but because of the pure emotion and beauty of her music. The recognition was overwhelming, yet deeply gratifying. For the first time, she felt that her music had a real place in the world, that it could touch others, inspire them, and be appreciated. Despite all the attention, she remained humble and grounded. She continued her work at the cafe, serving customers, cleaning tables, and keeping the place running smoothly. But everything felt different now. Her ordinary life had been transformed by her talent, and she carried herself with a quiet confidence that others could sense. She had discovered that being recognized for her abilities did not make her better than anyone else. It simply allowed her to share a part of herself that had always been special. One evening, a small group of music enthusiasts came to the cafe, hoping to hear her play. The owner had arranged it quietly, wanting to give her a chance to perform for a new audience without overwhelming her. As she sat at the piano, her fingers brushing the keys, she felt a familiar thrill. She played with freedom, letting her emotions guide the music, creating a piece that was uniquely hers. The listeners were spellbound, their attention completely captured, their admiration evident in every gesture. After the performance, they approached her, eager to learn more about her journey. She explained that she had learned on her own, practicing in secret, never expecting to perform for anyone. Their amazement only grew, and they encouraged her to consider formal lessons or even public performances. She realized that these opportunities could help her grow as a musician and reach more people with her music. The idea of stepping into a broader world was intimidating, but it was also thrilling. The experience taught her an important lesson. Talent alone was not enough. Courage and willingness to share it were equally important. By stepping forward, even in fear and uncertainty, she had opened doors she had never imagined. She began to see that her music had the power to connect people, to evoke emotions, and to inspire. It was not just about performing. It was about communication, expression, and sharing a part of herself with the world. In the following weeks, she received invitations to perform at local events and gatherings. Each opportunity was a new challenge, pushing her out of her comfort zone and teaching her to trust herself and her abilities. She practiced diligently, not to impress others, but to honor her own love for music. The joy she felt while playing was infectious, and audiences responded with genuine admiration. Slowly, she built a reputation as a gifted pianist, known not only for her technical skill, but for the heartfelt emotion in her performances. Even as her life began to change, she remained connected to the cafe, the place where her journey had truly begun. It was a reminder of how far she had come, of the ordinary life that had hidden an extraordinary talent. She continued to serve customers with the same care and attention as before, but now with a quiet pride, knowing that the world could see and appreciate her in a way that mattered deeply to her. The music she played became a bridge between her ordinary life and the new possibilities unfolding before her. Each note carried not just sound, but meaning, a reflection of her journey, her struggles, her dreams, and her newfound confidence. She had learned that courage, talent, and persistence could create change, not just in her life, but in the lives of those who heard her music. She understood that her story was still being written, each day bringing new opportunities, new challenges, and new moments to share her gift. One quiet evening, as she closed the cafe and walked home, she reflected on the transformation she had experienced. The once hidden pianist within her had emerged, touching hearts and inspiring others. She realized that the power of music was not just in the notes or melodies, but in the emotions it could awaken and the connections it could create. Her life had changed in ways she had never imagined, and she felt gratitude, hope, and excitement for the journey ahead. She knew that this was only the beginning, that her music would continue to grow, and that her story would continue to inspire others in ways she had yet to discover. Months passed, and her life had changed in ways she never imagined. The once quiet waitress, who moved through her days unnoticed, had become known for her extraordinary piano talent. Invitations to perform at small concerts, private events, and community gatherings kept coming. Yet, she remained humble, always remembering the cafe where she had first shared her music. The experiences had taught her that success was not about recognition alone, but about sharing her passion and touching lives with it. Every morning, she still woke up early, helping her family, walking the familiar streets, and preparing for her day. But now there was a spark in her routine. The anticipation of performing, of sitting at the piano and letting her music flow, gave her steps a new energy. She practiced diligently, not out of obligation, but because she loved the music and the way it allowed her to express emotions words could never convey. Her hands, once just carrying trays and cleaning tables, now created harmonies that mesmerized audiences. Her performances became more confident, her improvisations more daring. She had discovered a voice in music that was uniquely hers, and audiences were drawn not only to her skill, but to the authenticity she brought to every piece. People often commented on how her music felt alive, how it told stories and conveyed feelings that were impossible to describe. She realized that this was the true magic of music. It connected hearts, bridged distances, and communicated without a single word spoken. One afternoon, she received an invitation from a local community center to perform at a charity event. She was nervous at first, unsure if she could handle a larger audience outside the familiar comfort of the cafe. But she remembered the first time she had touched the piano in front of guests, the joy she had felt, and the courage she had discovered. She accepted the invitation, ready to embrace the challenge and share her music with new people. On the day of the performance, the hall was packed. Families, music enthusiasts, and community members filled the seats, eager to hear the young pianist who had captivated the town. She felt a flutter of nerves, her heart beating faster than usual. But as she approached the piano, she reminded herself of all the times she had practiced alone, of the passion that had driven her for years. She took a deep breath and sat down, her fingers lightly touching the keys. The first note echoed through the hall, soft and clear. As she continued, she let her emotions guide her, the melodies flowing naturally from her heart. The music was expressive, full of depth and feeling, and it captivated the audience instantly. People leaned forward, listened intently, and were moved by the power and beauty of her playing. It was a moment of pure connection, where performer and listener shared an unspoken bond through music. She played with freedom, exploring new combinations of notes, improvising on familiar themes, and allowing the music to take her on a journey. Every chord, every melody was a reflection of her experiences, her hopes, and the long path she had traveled to reach this moment. She had discovered that music was not just about technical skill, but about conveying emotion, telling a story, and touching the hearts of others. The audience could feel it, and their reactions fueled her even more. When the final note lingered in the air, there was a moment of silence, a collective breath held, as if the hall itself was absorbing the beauty of what had been played. Then, applause erupted, loud and heartfelt. People stood, cheered, and some even had tears in their eyes. The recognition was not for fame, but for the genuine talent and passion that radiated from her performance. She smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment and joy. After the performance, several guests approached her, expressing their admiration and gratitude. They asked about her journey, how she had developed such a remarkable skill, and encouraged her to continue performing. She explained humbly that she had practiced in secret, always loving the music, and never expecting such attention. Their amazement and encouragement were overwhelming, but she felt grateful for the opportunities to share her gift and inspire others. Returning home that night, she reflected on her journey. She thought about the long hours spent practicing alone, the moments of doubt, and the courage it had taken to perform in front of people for the first time. Each step, each challenge, had shaped her into the musician she had become. She realized that the journey was as important as the destination, that perseverance, dedication, and love for what she did had brought her here. In the weeks that followed, her life continued to evolve. She balanced her work at the cafe with performances at various venues, finding joy in both. The cafe remained her anchor, a reminder of her humble beginnings, while the music opened new doors and experiences. She embraced every opportunity, yet remained grounded, never losing sight of the passion that had guided her from the very start. She also began teaching music to a few local children who showed interest. Sharing her knowledge and passion with others brought her immense satisfaction. She saw herself in them, the curiosity, the love for melodies, and the quiet determination to learn. It was rewarding to inspire and encourage others, to give them the confidence to pursue their own talents and dreams. She realized that her music had the power not only to move hearts but to nurture the next generation of musicians. Her life had transformed from a simple routine into a journey full of opportunities, experiences, and meaningful connections. She had discovered that talent, when combined with courage and passion, could change not only her life but also the lives of others. The music had given her a voice, a purpose, and a way to share her emotions with the world. It had revealed to her and to others that even the most ordinary beginnings could lead to extraordinary outcomes. One quiet evening, she returned to the cafe after a long day of performances. The place was calm, the lights dim, and the piano in the corner awaited her. She approached it, sat down, and let her fingers wander across the keys. The music flowed gently, a reflection of her journey, her gratitude, and the fulfillment she felt. She was no longer just the waitress who served coffee and cleaned tables. She was a musician, an artist, and someone who had discovered the power of following her passion. As she played, she thought of all the moments that had brought her here. The long hours of practice, the quiet afternoons alone with her music, the first nervous touch of the piano in front of guests, and the growing recognition and encouragement from those who had heard her. Each memory was a note in the symphony of her life, contributing to the beautiful story she was living. She realized that her journey was ongoing, that there would always be more music to create, more hearts to touch, and more opportunities to grow. The world had changed for her, and she had changed for the world. She had learned that talent alone was not enough, that courage, humility, and the willingness to share were equally important. She had discovered the joy of connecting with others through her music, and the fulfillment of turning a hidden passion into something that could inspire and move people. She felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that she had found her true path, and that her music would continue to be a guiding light in her life. As she left the cafe that night, walking under the soft glow of streetlights, she felt a quiet pride and an unshakable confidence. She had taken a journey from being an unnoticed waitress to a celebrated pianist, yet she remained grounded, connected to her roots and the music that had shaped her. She understood that the magic of her story was not just in the applause or recognition, but in the courage to pursue her passion, to share her gift, and to touch lives with the beauty of her music. And so, she continued, playing, learning, teaching, and inspiring. Her life was no longer ordinary. It was a melody that she lived every day, a composition of experiences, growth, and the joy of following her heart. The piano, once a hidden companion in quiet moments, had become her voice, her bridge to the world, and a symbol of the extraordinary potential that can exist in the most ordinary lives.